The Fringe Podcast, Summer Rewatch, Episode 3.
This is John Noble, and you're listening to the Fringe Podcast.
Web hosting for the Fringe Podcast is provided by HostGator. Easy WordPress installation, unlimited domains, unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth, and a 99.9% uptime guarantee. On sale now for $6.36 a month. Visit thefringepodcast.com/hosting and start serving up your website from the best hosting company in any universe. Welcome back to the Fringe Podcast as we continue our summer rewatch where we are taking Fringe Season 1, Episode 1, and going all the way through to Season 4, the Brave New World Part 2. And each week we're bringing in various members of the Fringe Podcast community, and today is no different. I am happy to be joined today by Hank, the Mad Economist, and Allan, Xerophytes. See, that's the thing, Allan. I call you Xerophytes so much, it's almost like Allan is your nickname to me. That's kind of funny. So why don't you guys each take a minute? Hank, we'll start with you and let you guys introduce yourselves.
Okay, Daryl. Well, thank you very much. My name is Hank Lewis. I am based in Houston, Texas. I'm an economics professor by day and a fringy and food blogger by night. I've been watching Fringe since it first started, and the summer rewatch always gives me a chance to reflect and notice the differences and all the connections that have happened up to this point. And I've been listening to the Fringe Podcast since about the middle of the second season, and I had to backtrack and listen to everything else. And I'm just very fond of this podcast. It's wonderful, and I'm glad you just made me part of it today. Well,
we're glad to have you. You're a regular contributor, a regular caller, and so I'm glad to have you joining us for the live show for the first time and participating, of course, today. Allan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Do I really have to introduce myself?
Absolutely.
Well, I'm Allan, but I'm more popularly known as Xerophytes, and I'm just a regular PhD student in biochemistry, not like Hank, who is actually a professor. And how long have I been watching Fringe? Well, since the pilot episode, obviously. And I really, really love Fringe because the main character, who is Walter Bishop, is like the main scientist guy, and then most of the cases, especially in Season 1, are actually grounded in science, and therefore that's how I really fall in love with the show. And plus, you have a lot of witty dialogues and the gore and all this stuff, and that's really what draws me in the show.
Well, very good. So, if I understood the two of you right, I'm joined today by an economics professor and a biochemistry professor. Is that
I'm not a professor.
Yes.
You're not a professor, Allan. Okay.
I'm a PhD student. I don't have a doctor's title yet.
I see. Well, it's going to be pretty obvious that I'm the dumbest guy on this podcast today.
Oh, come on.
That's all right. We're glad to have both of you guys, and you guys are both regular contributors to our podcast, very active members in our community, and we're grateful for all that you do to make the podcast what it is each week, the feedbacks that you guys send in and the harassments that you send me, and Zero's constantly giving me a hard time on Twitter or in the chat room, and it's what makes it fun, this whole community thing that we have going here, and we're grateful for both of you guys. So let's get it started today. I forgot to give this little disclaimer last week, I think, but the goal of this podcast, this summer rewatch podcast that we're doing, is to, like I said, to go through Fringe from Season 1 through Season 4 with the intent of trying to kind of connect dots that we forgot existed because we haven't seen those dots in so long. And here, as we head into the fifth and what will be the final season of Fringe in the fall, we thought it would be really a good time to go back and watch all of these episodes. So that means, just by that very nature, that we're watching these episodes and trying to connect dots with other things that we've seen, that there is definitely a possibility that there will be some spoilers in the course of this podcast series. So if you're watching Fringe for the first time and you haven't gotten all the way through Season 4, just let that be your warning. If you don't want to be spoiled, then this podcast is probably not for you. You're definitely going to find some benefit from it, but it's not going to be a completely spoil-free podcast. We're not going out and covering every little detail of each of these episodes either, so we would encourage you to go back into our catalog and listen to all of our podcasts as we've gone into the detail of every single episode of Fringe since the beginning. And you can do that over on iTunes or on our website at thefringepodcast.com or any other place that you get podcasts. So just kind of throw that disclaimer out there for you guys. So with that having been said, let's get things started. And I realized that I forgot to put my food for thought music into the show notes or to the audio cue. So here we go. I've got it in there now. Let's get started with our food for thought.
Root beer float. Butterscotch pudding.
Mr. Papaya.
Fruit cocktail. Coffee yogurt.
All right. Okay, guys. Well, the first thing we typically do is we try to remember all the different things that Walter had, all the food things that he had wanted in these specific episodes. I didn't make any notes on this time. You guys are going to have to help me out here.
Rice was used when he was demonstrating the little vibration between the molecules using the electric football.
That's
he
right.
used a whole bunch of rice for that.
Yes. Yep.
And I also remember at one point they said they wanted some whiskey for something else. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm drawing a blank on the other. I didn't make any notes on that. I was traveling this week, so my regular routine was a little disjointed. But anyway, all right. Well, let's get.
Is this a cheesesteak episode?
That's the next one.
That is the. Yeah,
that's Bound.
Bound. Yeah, that was in this series that we're covering. Yeah.
All right.
Definitely had the cheesesteak. That was a funny one. Yeah, because then Peter wanted a cheesesteak as well.
Well, they're doing an autopsy, no less.
Yeah, that's right. It's disgusting. All right, we're going to get things kicked off here with the episode 10 of season 1, which was called Safe. The synopsis is: robbers empty safety deposit boxes by using technology to walk through the walls of bank vaults. The thefts give them access to pieces of a device designed to teleport. The untested device allows a convicted criminal to teleport directly from a German prison to a deserted airstrip in Massachusetts. Olivia falls victim to the robbers. Once again, these synopses that we're reading are courtesy of our friends over at fringepedia.net. And if you ever have any questions about any information or anything like that, fringepedia.net is definitely the best place to go to get your information on Fringe. This episode was written by Jason Cahill and David H. Goodman and directed by Michael Zinberg. So let's open up the discussion. Hank, why don't we start with you?
Well, a couple of interesting things to mention here. I was thinking about the teleportation device that they were using. You notice the big beam of light is very similar to those beams of light that we saw towards the end of season 4 when they were using the satellite to burn up parts of Boston trying to set the oil on fire.
Oh, okay.
Also, this episode, a couple things that rang out to me was the scene in the tool rack where Peter and Walter had gone there to try to find a saw, and Walter went into a big description of, I need a rotating circular saw with a certain kind of blade that will cut through flesh and bone. It's more sinewy than you think. And then Peter's just horrified, and it's like, please don't call the police.
Yes. Yeah. We got an interesting note sent in from Doc H, who actually runs Fringepedia. And he pointed out that was in Philadelphia where that happened. That's where that bank was. So they were probably at a hardware store in Philadelphia. And we had learned that Lincoln Lee's dad owned a hardware store at one point in Philadelphia.
Oh, nice connection.
Yeah, doubtful it was the same one, but it was still an interesting connection nonetheless.
And Walter and Peter were a pair of tools at the tool rack.
Nice.
I also remember noting in here the muddling of John Scott and Olivia's memories and some of the problems it was causing. And again, the parallel in season 4 is Olivia's confused memories between the two timelines.
Yeah, definitely.
Not just the season 4, but also season 2, when Olivia's memory was embedded onto Olivia.
Oh yeah.
And William Bell's
the soul magnets.
So it's just so happened that this is actually the like a running theme of every season, that we just have to mess up the brain of Olivia.
Yeah. And I think it points to the strength of her abilities, right? I mean, we saw in season 3 when the folks at Massive Dynamic tried to give cortexiphan to adults, they died. They weren't able to handle it. And I know that Olivia's had cortexiphan since she was a child, but it still speaks, I think, to the strength of her mind and her abilities. That she's able to have all of this stuff happen to her. How many times has she gone in the tank now? By the time we wrap up today, I think she will have been into the tank 5 times already in season 1, where she's got the drugs and the electrodes put into the back of her brain, all these memory swaps, and she is, very uniquely qualified to be able to handle all of this stuff.
Something that could liquefy a normal human's brain. Her brain is quite survivable and strong and tough, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. And because of the cortexiphan, spoiler alert, season 4, it can even, fix itself, I guess, or mend itself after a bullet wound straight to the brain.
Yep.
Have you ever noticed how many bullet shots they do straight to the forehead on Fringe? It's quite a large number.
It is a disproportionate number, I'm sure.
Yeah. Another thing I would also note here is the Fibonacci sequence. We've seen this come up several times. The safety deposit boxes, how Walter remembered they were his, and Peter recognized them because of the same series of numbers. I also made a couple of notes there about how Olivia and Peter Olivia had them being a brother and sister, and Peter wasn't entirely thrilled with that, actually, at the bar.
I remember back in these early days, there was a lot of shippers who were wanting the Peter and Olivia relationship to get on with it already, but there needed to be some time between
really
John
like
Scott.
It. I'm not really invested on the Olivia and Peter love thing during season 1.
Oh, me either.
I'm actually rooting for John Scott and Olivia.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily rooting for that, but I remember back then, and I'm still that way. I'm so glad they didn't really. They gave some hints at it. They had a little hand touch. I don't think we talked about it in our last podcast, but it was in one of those groups of episodes. I'm glad they waited when they did. They developed it, I thought, at a good pace.
Yeah. Because all along I thought they were like siblings or something like that.
Yeah.
But that's not how it ended.
No.
Yeah,
we did. That's right, Zero. We had the Luke and Leia theory to begin with, didn't we?
Oh.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
And Walter's behavior towards her is very paternal a lot of the time.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also made a little note here about the suit that David Robert Jones had his employee get that he put on. Had a blue coat and a red tie.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. Of course, Peter's French drop trick also, and the silver dollar trick again, like we saw in the episode Peter, but he's doing with the different coins as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I wrote that down too. This was the first time we had seen any type of reference to the coin, which we would get a whole lot more meaning, to that significance, both through the comics and through other episodes.
Very much so. You're right. I also made another observation here about Walter claiming he made a time travel device to try to get the formula from Dr. Albert Gross, as opposed to jumping universes and that nature.
Yeah. So, do you guys think that it really does allow time travel? I mean, we saw no evidence of that, and he said that he hadn't tested it. We know that what he said about Peter's sickness wasn't the entire truth. So, what do you think about that?
I'm of the opinion. Go ahead.
I think time and space are always like there's always a relationship between time and space. So I guess if that device was able to Star Trek Jones out of the prison, then I guess that's also possible to do in terms of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because Germany and US, you have different time as well, right?
Sure.
So I guess you just don't take out someone out of prison, like what Jones did, without actually traversing the time.
Right.
Well, here's my take about that. The Earth rotates a little bit faster than 1,000 miles an hour. The device that they were using for the safe boxes is supposed to vibrate matter, kind of like the Flash would, to pass through solid matter. Given the position where he was standing in the Earth's rotation, wouldn't it be basically that the Earth would pass through him and rotate past him, and then like he'd solidify somewhere in an open area like in Boston?
Yeah, I mean that's always the for the purists, I guess, of time travel, that's something you have to take into consideration. You know, in other words, you can't have the Back to the Future thing where Marty, you know, leaves the parking lot and ends up in a field that happens to not be a parking lot back in 1955. He would have actually had to account for the Earth's rotation as well. It gets really complicated when you do that, though, so I'm kind of glad they didn't necessarily get that complicated with it.
Also, I think the writers throw that in. Maybe they have like some sort of insight that probably in one of the multiverses, Walter actually used that as a time travel device to get the scientists from the past to treat Peter.
In some other alternate universe, yeah. That's certainly possible. And one of the thoughts I had, too, on that was that perhaps we'll see it tie into the observers somehow. And I don't know that we'll get back to this piece of technology, but it would be cool because we know that the observers are humans from a future point in time, and we know that they have the ability to travel through time and through space.
Yes, they do.
So perhaps this was some sort of, you know, technology that somewhere down the line allowed them to be able to do what they do. But I doubt we get back to this piece of technology. I doubt we'll ever get any answer to that.
Yeah, same here.
Another note that I made was about Burrell's very hostile confrontation with Nina over the telephone, but at the same time, certain kind of layers to it that kind of give you the idea there's more to that relationship than we're seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't had the kiss at this point in the season. Oh, boy. All right. Any other notes from you guys?
I got a final note. When Olivia enters the bank, she was talking to Peter about she doesn't have a best friend.
Oh yes,
and
I made that.
Her nickname is actually Han.
Yeah.
And then
Han Solo. Yeah.
And then when they actually went to the bar, she actually told Peter that she has a best friend.
I completely missed that.
Does a sister count?
Wait, let me get the transcript. I'm pretty sure that she called her friend as best friend at the time.
Okay.
And friend. So you seriously don't have a best friend? That's what Peter said. And
right.
Olivia said, no. Well, does a sister count? Okay. Then the next one, in the bar, Peter said,
Yes.
What? The guy in the wall? Really? Let me guess. He's your best friend. Oh, no. Wrong. Okay, this one, in the bar. Wait. There. Olivia. Lugo's wife gave me some names. It just so happened the best... Oh, not that one. Where am I going? Okay, there it is. Peter said, seriously? And Olivia said, yeah, my best friend from high school's license plate, 7240168.
Oh, that's a contradiction. Good catch.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm guessing...
Yeah, I see it now in the transcript. You're right.
From high school, though.
Yeah.
Maybe
the first best friend that she was referring to, maybe it's not her memory, but it's John Scott's memory.
Well, that's certainly possible within the context of this specific episode, but at the same time, which it wouldn't necessarily eliminate this, but you see that Olivia has an amazing memory, and this was kind of the first time that we got to see just how amazing her memory is. But at the same time, she was pretty sure that guy that she had met Raul before, and it turned out it was one of John's acquaintances.
From his days as Marines.
Yeah, so it's possible, Zero. It's definitely possible. It's a good catch. Very good catch.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. I saw one similarity here where we saw that these guys were being recruited after they came back from war.
Yep.
And we will see that again, specifically since that if you've been keeping up with the season 4 discussions we've had, which I know you two have, the discussion that we had about the episode Fracture, where the recruits and stuff like that, the trench coat guys, but those guys that were being fractured, if I remember right, were also recruited through war or after they came back from war. I'll remember more as we watch the episode, but that was something that might have a tie-in as far as how they're getting these people to be a part of these cell groups. You know, we've had the discussion, how do you get somebody to agree to become a porky monster, you know? And so perhaps they're finding people either in some sort of mental fatigue or distress because they're suffering through post-traumatic stress syndrome, or they were part of some sort of program in the military that has left them susceptible to go into these programs. I don't know, but it's just something to keep an eye on.
I personally was of the opinion, given what was going on with Loeb and all the money going to his account, that he and his wife had a financial situation. And I also remember his wife was really fighting Olivia pretty tough before she took a bullet through the forehead, like Olivia did later on. And I think some of it was financial.
I think it's a great point.
Probably.
Yep. Yeah, I'm sure they're able to find that weak spot for various people. With Broyles, it was obviously his son, and then put pressure onto that weak point. So who do you think Jones and Loeb are working for?
Well, Loeb is working for Jones.
Who's Jones working for?
Jones
There's
is
nothing
working
in here
for
that
himself.
No, I don't think so.
In this timeline, there's nothing seems to reflect Bell at all in this particular timeline. That's what kind of was what I kept noticing, was there's none of the signatures of Bell that we saw in the revised timeline in season 4 that I could spot.
Yeah.
Jones is working for himself because all he wants to do is he wants to go to the alternate universe to meet William Bell.
I don't disagree with any of that, but I just still think there's someone above Jones.
I also remember in the later episode where they're quoting from ZFT and they give this big discourse about the other universe and the vibrations and this and that and the other. It was, and I noticed New Data made a point about later on. Loeb says it doesn't matter if you catch Jones, there's a whole army of us here.
Right.
But again, he might have a wrong information, like many other people in Fringe.
Yeah.
And with terrorist cells, typically one cell doesn't know about another, and they may feed them disinformation, so if one gets caught, they don't shut down the whole organization.
Yeah. And we did learn a few episodes ago that that ZFT is just one of many of these terrorist cells.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very true.
Okay. Any other thoughts on SAFE?
Just to remind us that SAFE also, the technology happened with, again, in the next few seasons. Is it season 2 or 3?
I think it was season 3. We saw it used over in the
Twins.
alternate universe in a more sophisticated way.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Okay, let's move on to Bound. And this is where we get introduced to the agent Sanford Harris that I just want to punch in the face repeatedly.
Ditto.
So let me just ask you guys, who is he working for? Is he simply and we may get the answers. I remember how he dies, but I don't remember the whole circumstances behind that. Maybe you guys do remember. But is he working just out of a vendetta to try to get Olivia back, or what's his? Is he working for somebody else?
I'm confused with him.
Yeah.
It seemed to me
he's working with someone, but not Jones. That's what I think.
Okay. So he's working for someone, but not Jones. Hank, what were you going to say?
Well, what I was going to say was, it seems to me it's like he was kind of thrown in there almost as a plot device, kind of like second season of X-Files, where some politicians weren't too happy with what was going on, and they were trying to shut things down or get in their way or throw obstacles. It seemed a bit contrived like that at first, but a lot of it seemed to play on his vendetta against Olivia, and he seemed to have some issues with Broyles also, but they weren't really as fully explored as I felt they should have been.
Yeah. Well, I think he thought that Broyles would be on his side because they had a history together, but I don't think it's this episode. It's coming up, but Broyles really took a hard stand and put his neck on the line for Olivia, which I loved.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I really hate the case of the week of this one.
Oh, really?
Because it's a poor science.
This was the cold virus one, wasn't it?
Yeah,
The giant cold
doesn't
virus. It
look like
reminded me
that.
a bit of Fluky from the X-Files. That giant fluke that grew in that guy's
Virus
jelly coughed
don't
out.
look like
Yeah.
that.
Go ahead, Alan.
Virus don't look like slug.
What do they look like?
They look like, you have an icosahedron head with like feet, tentacle-ish feet. So it doesn't look like a slug.
Okay.
No, more like a
Just
giant
type-
bacteria.
If you just type virus in Google image, you'll see what virus look like, and it's so different from what they show. So I'm really annoyed by that.
Only science guys like you, though, are going to be annoyed by that. See, people like me, we look at it and go, awesome, that's pretty gory. That's kind of gross.
Plus virus and bacteria, they're actually unicellular. So it won't look like that.
Well, they did say it was a unicellular or a single-celled organism.
Well, there are some bacteria that have like flagella hair on them, almost like that. Like I said, look more like a giant bacteria. A virus is supposed to be like a piece of DNA that might look more like a mosquito almost, or like just a little strand of something with like a little pincher or something. I thought so.
That's my main gripe.
All right.
I understand the point. Why did they do that? Why Loeb and probably Jones did this kind of experiment? What for?
I thought of two things. One, it could be just send a message, because the guys that they took out were guys that were top of their field, and one of them had been offered, or both of them had been offered positions with the CDC. So
yeah, epidemiologists is what they were. They were, scientists who were skilled in dealing with epidemics of different types of viruses or diseases.
Yeah, so I thought it was either A, to send a message, don't mess with us, or B, take out the two guys who could best thwart any future plans before they're able to get their position at the CDC, so you weaken your enemy in that case.
The second makes a lot of sense to me. It's like take out the guys that can stop them from causing an epidemic to accomplish some particular goal.
Yeah.
Okay, and who are they showing off to?
Homeland Security, I think.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe.
I still don't understand that.
Well, look at it this way. You're trying to some degree, intimidate your enemy. You're trying to basically weaken your enemy. You're trying to send a strong message saying you can't stop us. Even the people that you have that can take us out.
Jones and Loeb are actually... The enemy of Jones and Loeb are actually this Blueverse?
I don't think that's clear.
Exactly, because their enemy is the redverse.
Yeah, I mean, we were definitely led to believe that the primary enemy was the redverse.
Yeah.
But now we're led to believe that the primary enemy is the observers. So it might have, the redverse thing might have been a misdirection. I can't wait to watch these episodes again so I kind of get a better feel for them.
Or it could be just a timeline switch. Could have been like originally the redverse was the enemy, and then now the observers are the enemy because of the timeline shift.
Yeah.
Perhaps, but you still go back to the episode Fracture, which we haven't rewatched yet, and that one I think will be an eye opener for me when I rewatch it.
Agreed.
Yep.
Yeah.
I noticed Astrid had a red scarf with a blue shirt when she walked in again. And I caught a Point Break reference to the mask that the dude was wearing while he was giving the Olivia Spinal Tap.
Yes, definitely, but Point Break memories.
I also noticed Olivia's marine training kicking in, too. Such a badass Olivia is.
Yes.
Yeah. The car that Olivia drove is actually a Lincoln Navigator.
Yes.
So it's like a hint for Lincoln Lee.
I think it was just because Ford was sponsoring them at this point.
Yeah, I made a note about lots and lots of Ford product placement in this episode. I mean, they zoomed in on the hood ornament every time.
Yes.
The logo.
Yeah.
There's a very important comment from Loeb, which I think is haven't been answered. I can't remember the
I've got one quote pulled up here. Let me see if this is the same one you're thinking about. He's saying this to Olivia. He says, "Do you not understand the rules, what we're up against, who the two sides are?" Whoops, I got my notes scrolled over too far here. "Tell me at least you know that." And then she says, "Who's we?" He says, "We had a plan here, lady. We had a shot, and you just blew it."
Yeah.
Olivia says, "Then why did you kidnap me?" And he says, "Kidnap you? Idiot, we saved you." "Saved me from what?" she says. And he says, "We were going to let you go. We saved you. You have no idea what you've done. Not a clue." Was that the one you were thinking of there, Zero?
I
That's
still
one that I
got
made a note
no
about,
idea
too.
what that means.
Oh, that was my next question.
It's either they knew that they were the redverse is planning to kidnap Olivia, or they're talking about the observers taking Olivia. Either way, it's still impossible.
Yeah.
Well, at this stage, based on season 1 and 2, I would say that they were trying to save her to fight the redverse, fight the shapeshifters from the redverse that were coming over. That was the side they were wanting to use her and later on use her abilities, basically in this war, if you will.
Yeah.
Of course, now given season 4, it's kind of up in the air almost. Is it the observers? Is it the redverse? Or is it both of them or neither?
Oh well.
Yeah, I'm confused because I'm thinking about the shapeshifters. And the shapeshifters were brought over to the Blueverse in an act of war.
Yep.
But we still know that from the beginning, the observers, in the minds of the creators of the show, the observers were the enemy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm still confused on this. I really hope that we get some clarification and we get some clarity, I guess is the better word, as we continue on through this series. But at this point, not watching ahead, I'm purposefully not watching ahead. I'm still confused.
I also made a note. This is.
Go ahead, Hank.
I also made a note. This is one of the first appearances of Rachel and her daughter Ella.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
And it also made me think Ella, Ella.
Yeah.
Just one of those little comments.
Yeah. Henriella, is that her real name? Is that what you're saying? Zero, what were you going to say?
Do you think we'll be able to see Mitchell Loeb in the final season?
I hope so. You know, he's kind of been stowed away in prison this entire time. You know, I would have loved to see him come back and realign his character with the storyline.
That's the thing I was wondering, given the fact of the different timeline, was Mitchell Loeb ever arrested? Was ever put in jail? Did we ever have the giant virus? You know, this is one of the things that I've been kind of pondering about a bit.
Well, particularly when we think about what we saw in the transformation and how he tied into that group, which, Hank, I won't steal your thunder. You've got some great notes on that. Maybe not. Maybe not. Okay. Any other thoughts on Bound?
Nope.
All right. Let's move on to the no-brainer now. You know what? I forgot to give the synopsis on my. I've been paying attention to. I have 2 sets of show notes, and this is what happened last week too. Let me backtrack again here a little bit. So for Bound, this was written by J.J. Abrams, Jeff Pinkner, Alex Kurtzman, and Roberto Orsi. The heavy hitters were out for that one, and directed by Frederick E. Otoye. I forgot to give the glyphs back in Safe, and those glyphs were trade. And the hint of Bound that we saw in the episode Safe was when Peter and Olivia were in the bar, we saw a sign in the back that said The Colds, which was like a band, but it alluded to the cold virus that Xerophytes spoke so fondly of a moment ago. And in Bound, the glyphs spelled saved, which I think points to Olivia being saved. And the clue is very obvious in this one. At the very end, Ella is being read a story by Olivia. Actually, it looks like they've fallen asleep on the couch. And the name of that book was What's That Noise? Now, that brings us right into the no-brainer. The synopsis for this one: the team investigates the death of a car salesman found in a pool of dissolved body tissue, exactly like another man across the country. While Walter tries to determine the cause, deaths pile up until a common thread linking the victims together is discerned. Dunham gets involved when the case places A Loved One in Harm's Way. This was written by David H. Goodman and Brad Caleb Kane and directed by John Polson. Now, I mentioned What's That Noise being the tie into this episode. This one worked through a computer virus that would pop up on your screen and say, "What's that noise?" And when you would click it, then this series of audio and visual, what's the word I'm looking for here? Sensory, I guess, would come.
Stimuli.
Stimuli. There you go. That's perfect. Would take over your brain functionality and melt your brain. So let's get the discussion kicked off here. Who wants to take this one first?
Zero, I defer to you.
This episode actually freaked me out because I'm always in front of a laptop, and knowing that maybe one day I'll click on something and the hand will actually take my head out or something like that. But overall, I just don't like the case of the week because I just don't like it.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
And it's so fake. It won't happen. I don't think it will happen.
No, and I got the impression, I think as I watched through it this time, the hand that was coming out of the screen wasn't actually physically coming out of the screen. It was part of what the illusion was coming, what the person who was perceiving it was seeing.
Yeah.
But it kind of also worked as a metaphor, I guess, for how close the person's brain was to getting to that boiled state, I guess, and liquefying.
Mm-hmm. But I guess what I like about this episode, it's because it's about parent and kid relationship.
Okay, that's interesting.
You have the relationship between Walter and Peter, which just suddenly changed. Peter become more protective of Walter, and then you also have the relationship of what's the name of the lab assistant?
Oh,
Warren.
Carla Warren.
Carla Warren and Jessica Warren.
Right.
So Jessica was trying to find a way to resolve her feeling. So she wants to talk to Walter. And then you also have the case of the week, who is can't remember the name.
I
You guys remember the name?
No, I don't.
Dempsey.
Dempsey,
There.
that's it. Yep.
Luke and Patrick's relationship. So Patrick was also trying to protect his father, which is like a parallel to Peter protecting Walter.
Yep. It definitely had that punch at the end of the episode when Walter, or Peter rather, when Olivia says what she does about why he was protecting his father, Peter realizes it and allows Jessica to come talk to Walter.
Yeah.
Couple of notes that I had here. Notice the brain freeze as opposed to a brain melt with the Operation Game with Ella, for example.
Uh-huh.
The little segue
Good.
about single ladies and so forth.
Yep.
Rachel, later on, Olivia, whom Peter's involved with, especially the comment that Walter made about sexually aggressive females and selecting their seat, kind of reminds me of Peter and of Olivia there.
Yep.
And let's not forget Walter and his TMI. I trust you have condoms to prevent the spread of sexually transmitted diseases. And just Peter's horror when his father says that.
Yeah, and that was again
but
more of
Peter
that.
doesn't take Walter's advice.
Clearly not.
Apparently not. Yeah, and this was more of that sexual buildup they had. That the audience was rooting for that relationship to develop between Olivia and Peter, and they would throw those little things out there to kind of bait the audience, but the relationship wasn't developing yet.
Yeah.
I think this is the second time that Walter actually warns either Peter or Olivia about having safe sex.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we had it earlier in the episode or in the season too.
I think it's I think it's in season 1, episode 2, I believe. Anyway,
well,
never
he
mind.
mentions it about her and John. He asks her if
Yeah.
or maybe that was in the flashback, whatever it was, or the dream. Yeah. So.
And then, I also noticed the parallel, the fused platters in the computer compared to the melted brains for the people there. Happened with both of them, the computer and their brain.
Yep.
And I really hate Harris.
Yeah.
You wish he was the one that would get that computer virus, eh?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. This was the episode where Broyles stuck up for Olivia to Harris, really put his neck on the line. And it was great. Again, like we talked a few episodes ago, where Broyles is going to stick up for his team, his family. And there may be conflict within that team, but outsiders are not allowed to come in and penetrate that family unit that they have right here. And I loved the way that he stuck up for Olivia. It was very powerful, I thought.
He just got in Harris's face and just let him have it.
Yeah.
I was very surprised, especially given he did a little bit of hostility with Olivia himself, but he just kind of turned around and was like, back off, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. But this was an episode that I remember watching. This was my Mole Rat Boy episode of season 1. I remember the first time we watched it way back then. We didn't really care for the episode. I remember we kind of made fun of its name, saying it was a no-brainer. It was just, And I still feel that way. I mean, it was a fine episode. I don't hate it like, anything. I was going to say like Mole Rat Boy, but we'll see when I watch Mole Rat Boy again.
I think what makes this episode better than the Mole Rat Boy episode is because of the appearance of Jessica Warren.
I think you're definitely right there. That was a great scene. Very powerful scene. And Walter takes her off at the end and says, come with me, I'll tell you all you want to know about your daughter.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was beautiful. But other than that, I mean, like the guy that was the Dempsey character, the dad, he didn't seem to be working for ZFT or anything else. He seemed to be on his own personal vendetta. Yeah. So it was really a total standalone episode.
I'm just trying to figure out how he got all that computer equipment if he was no longer working and had all these work issues here and there.
Yeah.
The last line that he said, he actually wants to see his creation.
Yes.
You're staring at the computer monitor.
So I think that's like one of the themes of the episode. One of the theme of the series, because you also have an episode wherein Walter wants to see the creature that was based on his study.
Yeah.
And also William Bell, at the end of the season of season 4, he actually wants to see his new world creation.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's a valid point. It's a very good point. I like that. Okay.
A couple of other notes here about Akeem, the computer guy that wished he hadn't bet that valuable coin, and how Peter was doing the coin trick again in the French drop, trying to get his help with the case.
Yeah.
One of his sketchy old contacts. And for food, there was a bunch of old pizza and takeout and stuff all in Dempsey's little lair, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on this one?
Let's move on.
Yeah, I'm with you, Zero. All right. Now, these next two episodes are, I think we're really going to enjoy talking about. The first one is the transformation, which obviously tied into season 4 in a major, major way. Hank, I know you've got some great thoughts on this, so I'm going to let you kick it off.
Well, a couple of things I want to make a little note about here. It's amazing when you take a look at the transformation, what happened, how it seemed to have absolutely no connection to either David Robert Jones or Bell originally. It seemed to be more of a bioterrorist or Homeland Security-oriented issue. But the thing that really stuck out in my mind and seems to have been forgotten in Season 4 was the fact that Bowman and Hicks were connected with John Scott. And it was Olivia's memories that she had gotten from John Scott, or John Scott's memories that were in her brain that made her recognize those two people. And that they were, it seemed almost, when I was rewatching it yesterday and I double checked on this, almost like they were investigating these people under deep cover. Another thing that I may have also mentioned was the fact that Hicks was operating an import-export company, which was a front over in Chelsea. And remember, more recently, Walter and Astrid went to that import-export company in Chelsea that was supposedly having those almonds that Belle wanted. And it seemed to just be a total big shift away from anything that was here in this episode in Season 4. And I was trying to just figure out how did this much of a shift happen in the timelines.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if some of this loss of this connection to John Scott might be due to the fact that Anna Torv and Mark Valley's relationship didn't work out, and so Scott really can't be brought back unless they either recast him or unless like Anna Torv could be agreed to kind of deal with it, and same with him on some level or not.
Yeah, and that's possible. I don't know, what their relationship is like today, but that's a possibility, I think.
And here's another thing to mention. Virtus is actually from the Latin and the Italian. It means a love or a taste for curios or objects d'art, And Hicks, he said his import-export company was involved in importing and exporting art. Virtus there, importing, exporting art, just saying.
Huh. Yeah, and just to bring it back together, the season 4 episode that ties directly into this episode is the episode called Nothing as It Seems, which
awesome
was episode 16.
Very much so.
Yeah, great episode.
That's like the game-changing episode for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When you see the boat at the end, oh my god! It's like everything else just happened for a reason.
Oh, and speaking of the boat at the end, you notice the guy that was ahead of that bioterror cell, Conrad Etienne Moreau.
Yeah.
Island of Dr. Moreau, anybody?
Was Moreau his last name?
Yes, Conrad Etienne Moreau. I watched it twice to make sure I got it right.
That's right.
He was the head that was there. It's like, I don't recognize this person. Kill them. And then he found out after Christmas.
Yeah, that was great tie into Christmas. Okay, we got Moreau in season 3 with the guy that was the terrorist over in the redverse.
Season finale.
Yeah, was that the same
3
Moreau?
Finale. Yep. Is that right? Yep.
Yeah. Episode before the finale, or the finale one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I didn't catch that last name. Thank you, Hank. It's great.
No problem.
Yeah.
Also, that code Christmas actually have a significance. Remember in the LSD episode, where Olivia actually, Peter was trying to save Olivia, and when Peter got into her house, they were actually celebrating Christmas or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow that connects to it. Also, Christmas is also significant with the green, 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 red.
Sure, that's right.
Okay. Yeah, green, 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 red.
Yeah, when we saw the Christmas Carol a couple of episodes ago, was Project Christmas something that we saw on Alias? Was that an Alias tie-in?
I think
so.
so.
This was exactly right. I've been rewatching Alias the last couple of years, and definitely you're right.
And I think it's a it's either I can't remember. Never mind.
Okay. Go ahead, Hank.
Food references: watermelon and Chinese takeout.
Yes, definitely with the watermelon.
He was using the watermelon as a control sample.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wonder if he mutated the watermelon, though. That we never saw.
No, we didn't. His experiment failed. I mean, it seemed to work temporarily, but that might have just been from the sedation.
And let's see, a little more Walter creepiness. The half nipple rule.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Peter's face.
I was actually waiting for that to be discussed on the Nothing at the Sim.
Me too. I was hoping it would be there, and it never was.
And Peter's response is, "You had to ask."
Yes. And then something like, "I hope I never have to hear my father say the word nipple again." Yeah. Okay, but we saw, on a more serious note, I guess, a disc. We found another hand palm disc again, this time in the Porky Man hand. So he had a disc. The NSA agent back in the episode The Ghost Network, she had a disc in her hand. John Scott had a disc in his hand.
I think Hicks did too, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you might be right. So we've seen Hicks and John Scott tie in together. What about the other two people? How are all these disc people tying in together? Are they all undercover agents working? Are they like implants into a ZFT type of terror cell, or are they traitors? What are they?
Any information about the what's inside what data is inside this glass disc?
Well, I
Did we
know
get
that
that
Nina
information?
Sharp said that it was tied to the life signs of the wearer. They'd extracted some reference to Conrad from the one that was in John Scott's hand, and they'd been keeping his body alive so they could try to siphon off some of the data.
So it's all about just Conrad.
Yeah, I think it might be just a storage device. As these guys are presented with information, it's almost like a brain. It's not controlling them like a brain would, but it's storing data like a brain would.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just a plot device.
I think that's exactly what it turned out to be.
And yeah, do we have anything on the Porky Man in Nothing Else Seems? Like any device?
I don't think so.
They didn't go
We only
there,
have the-
I think as it seems.
No, I don't think we saw these.
We only have the tattoo. Is it?
Right. That's right.
Okay.
Well,
Which-
I remember
yeah.
when Olivia was purging the last memories of John Scott in the tank at the end.
Yeah.
He had said he had known Marshall Bowman and these other gentlemen from being involved in black ops, and that this was part of some kind of very deep undercover operation.
Right. Well, we haven't seen the discs since season 1, I'm pretty sure. I know we haven't seen them in the last couple of seasons. So that's why I say Zero. I think you're exactly right. They're just a plot device, but
Okay.
I thought they might serve as a clue also to help us figure out who these people are, who they're working for.
Yeah.
Wasn't there some kind of a data disk in the rectum of the shapeshifters they were pulling information from?
Yeah, they're the butt drive, but it looked quite a
little
bit different
different,
from these, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a similar type of thing, but I don't know. Yeah.
Also, this is the episode where we last see John Scott.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I wrote that down too, that there was finally closure to the Olivia and John Scott relationship. I thought it ended really, really well. You had the frozen lake scene there at the end that she's standing on the dock and he's there, and they seem to I don't know if the frozen lake was a foreshadowing of or not, if it was just happening with that time of year and that was all that they could
Lake,
do.
yeah.
But at any rate, I thought the closure there between that relationship was really, really well done.
yeah, I like it. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Kind of sad, too.
Yeah. It was, because at the end, we had kind of believed that he was a traitor all this time. And we kind of got the impression that he ended up not being a traitor. He was kind of working undercover, couldn't really divulge what he was working for. It was one of those things, like if you're captured or killed, we don't know you exist, and that's kind of what happened. He was captured or killed, and they can't acknowledge that he existed or was working for any type of subplot, within the U.S. government or military, and he's going to go down as a traitor, but I don't think that he was.
Yeah, I remember Broyles had a talk with Olivia and basically talked about what the official status of him was, but he also acknowledged what that he'd really done also.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts here?
Can you go over the synopsis?
Yeah, thank you. I just remembered that I forgot to do that again. I'm terrible at this. The team... let's see, I think I'm missing a word here. The team into a case when the bizarre corpse of a passenger is discovered at the crash site of an international aviation disaster. Memories tip the team towards some promising leads, but the bigger picture and mysterious threat eludes them. With limited options and insufficient intelligence, Olivia and Peter go undercover. Written by J.R. Orsi and Zach Whedon, directed by Brad Anderson. The clue we got from this episode, I'm so terrible at this, I'm sorry guys. The no-brainer, the glyphs were Bishop, and the clue for this
Bishop
one...
gets sacrificed.
Yeah. At the car dealer, back in the no-brainer, the car guy was fried. There was a sign on the car dealer that said lease for $718 a month.
Yeah,
and this was the plane crash that happened here in the transformation was Flight 718. So that's the tie-in. The glyphs for the transformation were avian, which
we never saw the wings for that transformation, back in season 1, but then we saw them in season 4.
I like that, Hank. Yeah.
I think this glyph was actually spurred out some discussion about the avian flu or something like that.
It did. It definitely
Yeah,
did.
bird flu, Peter. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the clue that is in this one is really, really hard to see. In one of Olivia's dream visions, we see the motel sign where she and John would go to have a little time together.
R&R.
On that was also ZFT. You could see ZFT being reflected on that as well.
Right.
And so now we get into the episode Ability, which we're now starting to learn more about ZFT. The episode Ability is one of the foundational episodes in the entire series of Fringe. And, it's one of those where, people will ask sometimes, okay, I want to get caught up with Fringe, but I don't have time to watch every episode. Give me the core episodes. And you cannot not watch this episode.
There's no such thing as core episodes.
Well,
every episodes are important.
No, I disagree. I mean, we just talked about how the no-brainer doesn't tie into anything except for this little thing with Carla Warren.
Yeah, we finally learned about Carla Warren. Too.
Yeah.
It's still an important part.
Every episode is going to give you the fullest picture. I'm just saying, if someone doesn't have time to watch everything, they want a list of 10 or 15 episodes, Ability is definitely one of those on the list.
Fine.
I try to encourage people to watch the entire series, Xerophytes. So don't get me wrong. The synopsis for this one: Olivia's connection to escaped prisoner David Robert Jones becomes evident when he surrenders to officials and tempts her into a controversial test of will and ability. The federal task force investigates related cases where faceless victims have died from their orifices suddenly sealing shut. Written by David H. Goodman and Glenn Whitman and Robert Chiappetta, and directed by Norberto Barba. All right.
The glyphs.
The glyphs spelled Olivia. And our clue on this episode, which we won't see until the next one, which was Inner Child. But you'll remember in the episode Inner Child, the child takes some yellow M&Ms and makes a little tree out of them. And we saw a yellow tree on the newsstand there at the very beginning of the episode when the newsman's face becomes sealed off.
Oh, so amazing.
Yeah. All right, Zero, take it away.
All right. So this is the episode where we see Olivia trying to switch off the light.
That's right.
And in season 4, she was asked to switch on the light.
The lights.
Yes.
Yeah. And what else? This is also the first time we get to see the ZFT manifesto.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the wonky Y at the end of the episode.
The wonky Y.
Yeah, the wonky Y.
Yeah, Walter thinks he made the ZFT.
Yeah, and at this time, I think we were confused whether this is Walter's manuscript or Walternate's manuscript or somebody else typing for Walter or something like that.
Yep.
And I noticed the nice phone of Nina Sharp.
That's right.
Which unfortunately been downgraded seasons after season.
I know. That was like the little what do we call it? The quantum leap device, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I don't know if Nina really is not familiar with cortexiphan and the experiments in Jacksonville. Do we really actually know if Nina is involved with cortexiphan or Jacksonville experiment?
Well, she earlier in the episode talked about the college experiments, and at the very end she called Olivia back and says, oh, there was an experiment done a few years later with children in Jacksonville.
Right.
Like she suddenly found it, and I was like, suddenly? Okay, sure.
Yeah, I think she knew about it the whole time. It was just her timing. Obviously, she's never been one that's just been forthright, and revealing all that she knows. I don't know why she chose to reveal it later instead of then.
But in the flashback, in 1985,
yeah,
she knows about the crossing over.
Sure.
But does she knows about the experiment?
I think she does. I mean, she's had a relationship with Bell or Bishop since they were in college, hasn't she?
I guess so.
I believe
I don't
so,
know.
yes. One other thing I can also mention in here is that this is the first time we hear Walter saying, "Did you check his anus and penis?" First, and then later on, of course, with the shapeshifter.
That's right. That's right. And he has Astrid check that lady's anus back in, I think that was the early part of season 4.
Right, Michelle Krujek. Oh, you.
Yeah. All right. This was also Zero. You remember earlier when I said that I thought Jones was not working for himself. This is the episode that I'm basing that on. Olivia had a conversation with Loeb, and he tells her, she's looking for David Robert Jones, and she wants to know where he is. And he says, you're not really someone I want to work with. And then she threatens him and says, I've got transfer basically to send you to this really bad prison. And
Federal Pounding in the Patootie Prison.
That's right. and then Loeb interrupts her and says, it doesn't matter if you find Jones or not. He's just part of the army. What was written will come to pass, and you can do nothing to stop that. Nothing. So that's what I'm saying, where I don't think that he's working for himself. I think he's got somebody above him as well.
Do we get to see that army, though? What is the army?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Is that like the ZFT army?
Yeah.
And are they actually just following the manuscript without really like some sort of like a head figure?
Yeah.
That's possible.
I think that's possible. Yeah, I don't think that's the army coming from the other universe because he's trying to get over there to impress Belle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I really think that Jones is just working for himself. And he might have, like, create some sort of, like, a fake story for, I don't know, for Loeb and the others to just believe him and follow them. Follow him.
I don't know about that.
Using them all as a bunch of tools.
Yeah, it's possible. I'm not saying it's not, but I don't know.
I don't really know as well.
Yeah.
I can only speculate.
It's always conjecture, isn't it? Yeah.
Just a couple of other observations I have. David Robert Jones or his cronies seem to love putting nasty stuff on money. Remember the $2 bill had the deal that started stealing people's orifices, 2 different $2 bills, and then the $100 bills with the tracking stuff to confuse the folks in the redverse.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was one thing to mention. Agent Kemp, poor red shirt there.
Yep. Yep. You saw that coming.
It's all because of Harris.
What do you mean?
Because Harris doesn't want to. Harris asked Olivia to go in to the warehouse.
The amusement park.
Yeah.
No.
No, the where the Kemp
warehouse
got killed.
where the Kemp.
Okay.
Orifice.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Okay.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. Because Harris made her go get proof to tie in Jones to the orifice sealing case.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right.
Also, let's see, Harris and Jones. Harris was wearing a blue tie, Jones wearing a red tie, and he gave Harris another one of his list of items.
And Harris and Jones seems to be not working together. So that's the reason why I think there were separate groups or entity.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Which confused me because Harris got something to do with the pyrokinetic girls later on.
Right. That's the episode where he finally gets it.
Yep.
Yep.
Whole bunch of red verse references, though, like where Walter's reading the ZFT manuscript. Our universe is one of many.
Yes.
Only one world will survive.
There's even a word multiverse in there.
That's right. Yeah. This was the first time we saw multiverse mentioned. Also the first time we saw cortexiphan, which we already talked about.
Yeah. Also, the first time we saw Markham and his rare bookstore.
Yes.
Figured in season 4.
Yeah, he's been a steady appearer in every episode or every season.
Yeah. Of course, Olivia makes references to all of Peter's sketchy connections, whom we kind of saw like every other episode in season 1, but seemed to kind of fade out after a while.
Yeah, I think they were just trying to establish the kind of connections that Peter had so that when he needed something, it didn't seem totally out of left field that he was able to get something.
Okay.
And this episode also was the first time that we saw the power of Peter and Olivia together. And I can remember from the first time we watched this episode having these really good discussions on, did Olivia turn off those lights on her own accord, or did she only turn those off after Peter came back? You remember Peter was going to leave, and then he turned around and came back. And there was a moment there where he was gone and no lights went off. But seconds after he reappeared behind her, even though she didn't know that he was there, the lights began to go off. And we started having these discussions on, is it really the combination of Peter and Olivia together that is something that's super special here?
Well, remember some of what happened in Jacksonville when Peter showed up over there, and it seemed to activate Olivia somewhat. So I could definitely see the speculation there. It's like Peter's the catalyst for Olivia's abilities. His presence, maybe his being in danger, maybe combined with the stress, activates the abilities somehow. Yeah. Or when they traveled over to the other universe towards the end of season 2, Peter was there with her. Somehow or another, his presence plus the other cortexiphan kids seemed to be like a catalyst somehow, it might seem.
There you go. Yeah. I like that.
I forgot to mention this in the previous episode, the transformation. Olivia tells Peter that she's not scared, something to that effect. And then we have this episode, ability, which deals about cortexiphan. So it's like, it's some sort of a foreshadowing on how the character of Olivia being like fearless has to become someone who is vulnerable to have her ability, her cortexiphan ability to actually kick in.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
One of the things I was reading here from the way that David Robert Jones was talking about things was it seemed like he was wanting more to fight the redverse in this particular season as opposed to get cooperation from them or twiddle around with them like he was in season 4.
How are you getting that? I'm not sure. I'm with you on that.
Well, I was getting that primarily because of the fact that you remember Loeb was talking about the fact that this is part of a whole army, and they're talking about the visitations that were happening, that we were being attacked by this other universe, and so forth, and the fact that only one universe can survive. This kind of continued talk from the ZFT manuscript and from Jones, and the fact that he's wanting Olivia to be his warrior, if you will, a recruit that would later on, progress to a higher level, an unwilling recruit that would eventually become a soldier in the war.
Yeah.
It seems like he's trying to recruit her to fight this battle, but now in season 4, it's like he wants to destroy everything somehow, to create something new, which is they seem to be very, very different in the new timeline versus the original one.
Okay, I'm with you now. I agree.
Yeah. The revised timeline is just very tricky.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm guessing it's just because maybe in the first few seasons, which is season 1 to season 3, we are actually dealing with blueverse versus redverse, and therefore you have a reason like Bell and Jones got something to do, or a reason, or something to do, which is to protect blueverse. But in season 4, you have blueverse and redverse working together.
Right.
So what the hell are they going to do? So just create a new universe? I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, DC Comics does publish the Fringe comic books, and they've had several universe reboots, so who knows?
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Speaking of the comics, I read this week, and I don't have an article that I can, a link that I could put in the chat room or anything, but I'll try to find it for the show notes for this episode. But it looks like the comics that we've been reading that have been through the DC app, the electronic ones, looks like they are going to be publishing those. I think they're all going to be in one big set. I don't think they're going to be individual books, but if you haven't been able to get those electronically, I think they're publishing those in print.
Yeah, I saw some of them at the comic book store not too long ago. Bedrock City over in Houston, they definitely had it.
All right. Any other thoughts, guys, on any of these episodes we've been talking about today?
Well, there was a food reference actually that we missed over here, and pardon me, ability. There, Walter was asking for coffee cake, and of course David Robert Jones was asking for tea.
That's true.
And there was leftover fast food containers here and there and yonder throughout the episode.
Yep.
Oh, speaking of the decompression tank.
Oh yes.
Also, Walter goes into a decompression tank when he came over to Blueverse. Remember?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
When Walternet came over to the Blueverse, he also undergone a decompression tank, I believe.
Walternet?
Yep.
Oh, I don't remember that off the top of my head.
You talking about the one with the suspension bridge over there out in the woods where he met Peter at the... I think I do remember there was a vague mention of that.
Okay.
Vaguely.
Okay.
And that particular fellow that was working with Walternet, that other shapeshifter, he looked a little bit like Loeb or one of the other people. I was trying to remember who he resembled.
Newton. It was Newton, right? The shapeshifter.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Can I, because I actually listened to the first summer rewatch podcast just a while ago, and you were talking about the rogue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he might be like Donald, who was just hired by observers.
Okay. And you're talking about the guy who was the assassin that we saw back in the episode August. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because Donald has the gun as well, I think.
Yeah.
If I remember it.
I don't know. He seemed to be working against the observers to me.
Yeah.
Maybe an observer hired him to go against September.
Okay. Now, I could go for that, particularly knowing now what we know after the Letters of Transit episode we saw in Season 4.
Because the beacon got to do with September.
Uh-huh.
And probably...
Had they pull him back, yeah.
Probably the other observers don't want the beacon to somehow get into the hands of Peter where to reveal all this stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, Worcester, Ohio. You know, we're after the issue about the pronunciation of Worcester or Worcester, Worcester, Ohio.
Yeah, that's they did mention that where the cortexiphan trials took place there.
Yeah, and then there's the big debate of how do you pronounce that thing anyway?
Yeah, Worcester.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
And one question that I actually made a little note about: did anybody ever really kind of come up with what does that raised or wonky Y mean exactly?
Well, I think it was intended to show us where the manuscript for the ZFT was produced. So it seems like it was produced in that lab, but we never really knew for sure if Walter typed it or if Bell typed it, although I think Walter believes that he typed it.
Okay.
But he doesn't remember it.
Yep.
We'll see more about that develop throughout the next few episodes.
Also, we got to see the typewriter again and again in the next few seasons.
Yeah.
Very true.
I think that's it.
All right.
I think so.
Man, some great discussion today, guys. Thanks for joining in, Zero. I know this was one that fell into a time zone where you could join us since we were doing this at Sunday afternoon. So I'm glad you're able to do that today. The schedule for coming up for the rest of the time, we normally are doing these on Saturday evenings at 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern time. And so the next one will be June the 16th at 8 p.m. Eastern time. We will be discussing the rest of Season 1, episodes 15 through 20. So we'll be wrapping up Season 1 on Saturday night. I hope you guys want to join us for that, for the live show. You can do that over at thefringepodcast.com/live. You can come and hang out in our chat room. We've got some folks doing that right now as we discuss this episode, and we'll have a different batch of characters or cast of characters joining me via Skype next Saturday. The schedule for all of our rewatches is easy to find. Just go over to thefringepodcast.com/calendar. That will forward you over to our calendar page, and You can see the whole list that we have there. We're still looking for folks to join us at Comic-Con. We've had about 3 people right now that have told us they want to participate in that. Even if you're just going to be at Comic-Con and want to come, just watch us do it, hang out with us while we do it, send us an email. So whether or not you want to do the Comic-Con thing, or even if you just want to do the a weekly, if you want to participate in one of our weekly rewatches, send us an email over at feedback@thefringepodcast.com. And if you want to participate in Comic-Con, put in Comic-Con Rewatch. If you want to participate in any of the other weeks, put in their Summer Rewatch, and we will get you the information you need so that you can participate just like Alan and Hank did today. I also want to mention that the release date has been announced for Fringe Season 4 on Blu-ray and DVD. That will be released on September the 4th, 2012. You can pick that up through our affiliate link over at thefringepodcast.com. You'll see that we have a deal there on our sidebar for all of the Fringe DVDs. That'll take you over to Amazon and show you all of the DVDs and Blu-rays that are available, and anything you get through that link will earn us a commission, and we're certainly appreciative of any of that that you're able to help us out with, to help us keep the show going and cover our expenses here at Golden Spiral Media. Alrighty, let me pull my show notes back up, guys. I want to say thanks to Hank and to Alan for joining us today. You guys did a great job. Thanks for participating today.
Thank you very much for inviting us, Daryl.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure to have you guys. So I'm hoping that you guys have some clever sign-offs ready. If you're not, now's your chance to think about that while I give our contact information. I mentioned our email address earlier, feedback@thefringepodcast.com. You can also call us on the Fringe phone, which is 304-837-2278. You can follow us on Twitter at Fringe Observers, and you can connect with us on Facebook at facebook.com/Golden Spiral Media. All right, guys, we've come to the end of our show today, and until next time, stay Fringe-tastic.
What the Fringe?
I'm sorry. See, Hank and I went over each other. I'll go first. Hank, you got it next, and then Alan can wrap us up. Until next time, stay Fringe-tastic.
And what the Fringe?
Please don't invalidate me.
Nice. Hey, how do you like that for wrong music? Let's try this one right here. The Fringe Podcast and Golden Spiral Media are not associated with Bad Robot Productions, Warner Brothers, or Fox. Golden Spiral Media's use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, and for educational purposes, as provided within United States Code, Title 17, a.k.a. Fair Use. Copyright 2012, Golden Spiral Media.